that is what will happen to the government revenue. When we put a tax, at the end of the day, our objective is to maximize the government income, because we need to have money for our expenditure. Therefore, it is very important what will happen to the government income. In the previous case, when we put a 40 rupee tax, we calculated, right? We will be putting 40 rupee per 1 unit. 40 rupee per 1 unit for this good as a tax. Then what would be the total tax income? 40 rupee is the tax, and in equilibrium at E1 determines 1000 unit as the selling amount. Then what is the total tax to the government? So government will receive 40 multiplied by 1000, 40,000 altogether, or this area as the tax. It is 40,000. So in this case, government earns 40,000 as the tax. Then, if the case is like this, what will happen? Let's assume government put the same tax, same 40 rupee tax. You can see here, and it's plus tax, which is 40 rupee. You can see the difference is 40. It is same graph, same tax. Only difference is in the demand curve. Now demand curve is inelastic. Response is less. Then what happens? Government put 40 rupees tax, and per unit tax is 40. Now what is the total government revenue because of this tax? Can someone write it down there? What is the total tax to the government? If we put the same 40 rupee tax per unit tax will be 40 rupee. But demand is inelastic. Therefore, total tax will be equal to how much? What is the total tax revenue to the government? Tax will be 40, that's true. Still tax will be 40, but see the amount selling in the market 1,500. Then total tax should be this area, which is 1,500 multiplied by 40, which is 60,000. Right? Previous case, here it was 40,000, same 40 rupees per unit. Here also 40 rupees per unit, but total tax revenue to the government is 60,000. What will happen if you take this case? Demand is elastic, response is high. When we get the tax, they decrease the quantity demanded significantly. Then what happens? This is the total tax area. Now we know the tax area, that is 40 rupee per 1 unit, and the total selling is, let's say, 500. Then 500 multiplied by 40, which is around 20,000. So tax will be 20,000. Now this case 60,000, this is 20,000, this is 40,000. With this, what we can understand, with the different degrees of elasticity, government revenue will be different, will be changed. Maybe government is getting a higher tax revenue, or the tax revenue may be lower. So this explains why government put tax on alcohol and tobacco yesterday. Of course, the reason what I explained in the very beginning, the reason for tax is the health, right? The reason for tobacco and alcohol, the reason given by the government is to protect the health of the public. But the real reason behind the higher tax rates on alcohol and tobacco is to get higher revenue. Government revenue will be very much high because response is very less. people consume maybe not exactly the same, but only very less decrease. More or less, they consume the same amount of alcohol and tobacco, irrespective of the price increment. So government tax will be very high. If you are an advisor to the finance ministry, what is the item that you ask to have a tax, to have a higher amount of tax to the government? Can you put any good item other than alcohol and cigarette? Any other item that government can get a higher tax income? Can you think of? Of course, amount of consumption may be less, but if you put 40 rupee tax, of course, your tax income will be very much higher. That is something like salt. What will happen if we put a tax on salt? There will be zero change in the quantity demand. And in this case, of course, there was something like this is the case like alcohol and tobacco. There will be some amount decrease. But if you take a good like salt, maybe if I put the right, so this is perfectly inelastic demand curve. For salt, demand curve will be something like this. So then what happened? Price was 60 and price will increase to 100. So 40 unit, 40 rupees per 1 unit tax will be there. It is 40, no difference. But quantity also will not change. Right? It is 2000. Then what happens? What is the total revenue to the government? It will be 80,000 now. Previously, we had maximum 60. In this case, now we are having 80,000. So if government wants to get a higher income from tax, what government need to do? It should tax on inelastic goods and services like petrol or diesel, alcohol, salt, medicine. Right? These are like necessities. So we cannot change our consumption depending on the price. Therefore, if government needs higher tax, government should focus on these kind of good items. If you look at the list, where the tax was increased yesterday, you can see that picture. Right? So government put higher tax on all these items where we are getting higher tax revenue. In fact, we have a bad example. With the previous government, when they came into power, they wanted to have a higher tax. So what they did, they put a higher tax on hybrid vehicles. That because that time hybrid vehicles had the lower tax compared to normal vehicles. So what happened when government put the higher tax on hybrid vehicle? Almost all the people who were consuming or were planning to buy hybrid vehicles, they slowly move into normal vehicle. So government lost totally in that tax. So they couldn't earn any tax by increasing the tax amount. Because hybrid vehicles were having a kind of elastic demand. People were buying hybrid vehicles not because of environmental concern. It is because of the price. So when price increased, they shifted the consumption to the normal vehicles in Sri Lanka. Therefore, government could not earn the expected tax. Instead of that, if they reduce the tax rate, of course, they may have taken more tax from that. Therefore, we should know whenever we are going to put a tax, we should know what will happen to the tax. So this one also shows that when supply is inelastic, in some cases we are getting supply inelastic, then total tax revenue will be high. The same can be explained when we are having elastic supply curve, then tax will be decreased. So at home, what you want to do again, have different shapes of demand and supply elasticities and calculate what is happening to the total tax revenue to the government, whether it is increasing or decreasing depending on the elasticity. This is very important, right? So that is an application of the elasticity, because elasticity tells us what is going to happen with the tax income, what is going to happen with the price, what is going to happen with the market, with the quantity. Will it be increasing or decreasing? Now, how to identify the total tax by this graph? You don't want to calculate, you don't want to do any algebraical solution, because I have not given you the demand function or the supply function. It is just a graph. We can easily get that, because let's say we are having point A, point B, point C, and point D. And this is, I put 500. Now, if I ask you to calculate the total tax revenue, what you need to do? So first we had demand and supply. This is the equilibrium with 60 and 2000 as the quantity. Then we put 40 rupees tax. When we put the 40 rupees tax, what should happen? Intercept goes by 40. And here also everything goes by 40. So we have a new supply curve like this. This is S plus tax. So new equilibrium will not be at point E, it will be at E1, because we have a new supply curve. This is the supply curve, this is the demand curve, so new equilibrium is E1. Quantity will be 500. Now we know in the market 500 units will be sold, and market price will be somewhere like 90. Let's say this is 90. And now we know what is the amount of tax per unit. Tax per unit is 40 rupees. It is given 40 rupees per 1 unit. Then we can calculate from here what is the total selling amount. Total selling amount is 500. So 500 multiplied by 40. That will be equal to 20,000. So tax revenue will be 20,000. In this graph, this is this A, B, C, D area. If you want to show it in a graph, total tax revenue will be A, B, C, D. This rectangle area, right? That is the total tax amount. If you want to calculate the value, here the distance is 500 and height, that is 40. 40 multiplied by 500, it goes to 20,000. So that can be done.